Hey guys, what's going on? We have an update to the Breonna Taylor situation. I first reported this back in April, way before all the Black Lives Matter protests. It seems like eons ago, and it was just 5 months ago. So, the first update is that there has been a settlement to her family of $12 million. That is a significant amount. That does not mean that criminal prosecution will not follow against the officers. Specifically, I think it was her mom who said in the press conference that she will continue to fight for criminal charges even though they reach a settlement. The second update is that the police gave their side of the story. They still gave no body cam footage. What a surprise. But they did say that they did knock at the front door several times to try and get their attention, and that was why Kevin, the boyfriend, got his gun in the first place. So, according to their side of the story, it was not a no-knock raid, it was just a drug raid. And the details, when we first broke the story, they said they got the address wrong and they were looking for someone else, and the person they were looking for had already been captured. Well, they dispute all of that. Now, who's telling the truth? I have no idea. They say that they were going after Breonna and her boyfriend because they've been dealing drugs for quite some time. Now, that doesn't change the fact that the police were in the wrong for this. I'm going to lay out my reasoning for this as concise as possible, although I'm very bad at being concise. Like, I don't talk for 10 minutes, I ramble on for like half an hour. The fact that it was, let's just say the police are correct and they did knock, that does not mean that their raid was justified. Every drug raid is unjustified according to the Constitution, no matter if you knock or no knock. There are no drug laws in the Constitution. The Constitution does not give the government the right to say what people should be able to put in their own body. Drugs, selling and buying drugs and doing drugs is a victimless crime. I know this has been said ad nauseum, but this is the reasoning. People were like, oh, she was dealing drugs, so that means she got what's coming towards her. It's like, no, that's incorrect. There is no crime. The police should not have been called to her house because there is no crime. Yes, I know there are many drug laws in this country that forbid people from taking certain substances or selling certain substances or buying certain substances. My argument is that that is all unconstitutional. Nowhere in the Constitution does the government give the government the right to say you cannot sell or buy things in a mutually consenting transaction. If you are two consenting adults, and I'm talking about minors, minors is a different story, but if you are two consenting adults and someone has a product that the other one wants, and the person willingly pays money to get that product and willingly uses that product in a safe and responsible manner, like, i.e., don't go driving when you're high. Like, even if you made marijuana completely legal, let's say we made it just like alcohol, it's still illegal to drive under alcohol, under the influence of alcohol. So driving under the influence of any of those drugs would also be illegal, even if we legalized everything. But everyone is consenting to the selling, buying, and the using of drugs. That is a victimless crime. There is no victim. No one's rights are being violated. No one's being harmed. Now, you may say, well, Robert, are you saying that we should legalize all drugs? Some of these drugs are really, really bad, like meth and cocaine. It doesn't matter. We are a free country and everyone has the right to do what they want with their own body, regardless of whether you personally think it's stupid or reckless or not. We are found in a nation where other people are going to shove their viewpoint down other people's throats. It's the same reason why Prohibition was completely retarded and didn't last, and it created a hellscape for the law enforcement and for people just trying to get a drink after work. That's why the underground business, the Prohibition era flourished with alcohol, because people are going to use these drugs no matter whether you make it illegal or not. They're going to find ways around the system every single time. Drugs are flourishing in this country despite the war on drugs going on for close to 50 years. I think it was in the 70s that Nixon coined the term and launched it. So we're going on half a fucking decade, and none of the goals of the war on drugs have been met. Drug use is at an all-time high percentage-wise of Americans. Legalized marijuana is sweeping across states. Every year, there's more and more states that decriminalize it or legalize it, whatever. The spending has been astronomical, increasing ever since they started, with nothing to show for it. It is a complete waste of money, even if you take the moral argument out of it and just look at it from a fiscal angle. You say, we pumped in trillions of dollars into this program for half a decade, and it is not even come close to even remotely achieving its objectives, then you can objectively saying this is a bad policy and we should get rid of it. So back to the Breonna Taylor thing. The cops should have never been called to that house in the first place. The politicians should have rescinded all of those laws saying they're unconstitutional. The police, if they had a spine or any morals, would say, I swore an oath to not enforce unconstitutional laws, so I will not enforce this. I will not go on this raid. That we should do under ideal circumstances if Americans actually upheld American values. Now, there are a lot of Americans who do uphold values. I'm not saying there's no one, but the vast majority of them don't. That's why the vast majority of them just allow this to happen and just say, oh yeah, well, my taxes are being wasted, but that's no different, so I don't really care. And odds are it's not going to happen to me, some drug raid. You know, I don't even use drugs, or if I do, like, I'll be smart about it. Like, odds are, even if I do drugs, it's not going to happen to me. Like, big whoop. That's their thinking. As long as it doesn't happen to me, I don't give a shit. Kevin, her boyfriend, was completely in the right to use lethal force to defend his own property. He owned, or they rented the property. I forget if they owned or rented. Regardless, it's his property. They are legally there. They're not trespassing. It's his goods he bought and he's selling. He has the right to defend it with violence. The state has no right to do this. All of this asset forfeiture that they use in the name of the drug war, all of these raids that they use are all unconstitutional. So therefore, the argument that some conservatives who hate drugs say, well, she was dealing drugs, so she got was coming towards her. She didn't deserve to die. They're not saying that using drugs should be a death penalty, but it's like she was doing illegal things, so like, what do you expect, right? That's basically their argument. We could use the same argument for during the Prohibition era, where almost everyone who wanted to drink was still drinking because there were ways to get around the law. Unless there was a shootout and some innocent bystander died, you wouldn't say, "Oh, was coming towards them." It's like she was at a speakeasy getting a drink after work because she was stressed out. Like, does she deserve to die? Wouldn't it be easier for the police to just not fucking do that shit? Like, it'd be so much easier. It'll be easier on everyone. We have spent $1.5 trillion on the war on drugs since 1970. Meanwhile, the US drug addiction rate has basically remained the same at a little over 1% the entire time. It has not changed the drug addiction rate at all. How could you take a look at this graph and say, yep, that's totally okay. Let's keep this J curve up and keep on just spending astronomical amount of money, even though we have done absolutely nothing in like many people's lifetimes. Like, just come on. From every single angle you can look at the war on drugs, and Breonna Taylor is just an iteration, a manifestation of the war on drugs. It's just one example of many that make up the war on drugs on a whole. When you look at it from a government spending issue, from a constitutional position, from a moral issue, any angle you can approach this policy, it's bad. And most people do agree that at least marijuana should be legal. I think the majority of Americans believe that. The harder drugs, they're not sold on yet, but it's a slope. We'll take what we can get. Now, am I saying that I want to do meth and cocaine because I want all drugs legal? That's what the constant counter argument is when libertarians say, I want all drugs legal. It's like, oh, you just want to blow your brains out on drugs. Like, no, actually, I don't. But I don't want to limit someone else from doing that if they so choose to. It's not my right. I don't have the authority. It's none of my business. I matter what's going on in my house with myself and my family. I don't care if someone else does something that I view as reckless or stupid or something. The same thing, I don't want them looking on like me drinking, for example, or me riding a motorcycle and just say, oh, that's dangerous for you, Robert, so we're gonna make it illegal for you to do that. And I'm gonna be like, fuck off. I can do what I want. I'm an adult. The same argument applies. The same argument that you will make against someone for not doing meth, they will use on you for doing something that you enjoy, that they view as dangerous. And using that logic, they can ban anything and everything they want. The overwhelming majority of federal prisoners and prisoners in state and local jails also are non-violent drug offenders. The fact that our prisons are so overcrowded because we are housing so many people who have committed victimless crimes, it makes absolutely no sense. We live in this clown world where we release rapists and assault people who like mug people and assault people on their second, third, fourth time. They commit a mugging, they get like 2 years and then like a couple of months probation, whatever, and then in 3 years again they do it again. Then they get like 4 or 5 years that time because that's super severe. Then they get let out, and then a year later they do it again. And it's just like, we have that going on. and yet someone deals drugs and gets like 20 hard years. And then we have like another murderer coming in, is like, oh, we have no room to house them because we have all these victimless crime, quote unquote, offenders in here, so we're just going to put you on probation. And then they go out and kill again. Like, just come on. Are you kidding me? It is ridiculous. We live in this upside down world where dealing drugs is worse than like assaulting someone or killing someone or raping someone. You know what could solve your we don't have room to house these violent offenders, so we're going to let them out on probation? If you would wipe clean all of these people who have committed no crime, you would have all the world in the prisons that you want, which I believe they should do. I don't believe that people who like violently assault someone or sexually assault someone should have a little slap on the wrist and be let out in 6 months because they had good behavior. You hear these stories of people committing the same crime like 4 or 5 times. You are creating so many more victims if you would just lock their stupid fucking ass up the first time. Then you wouldn't have created the next 4 or 5 victims. But no, we'd rather jail someone for 20 years because they were selling a product that someone wanted who's they were all consenting adults. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's good fucking policy. Amazing. The fact that about almost 42% of Americans try marijuana at least once in their life makes absolutely no sense that we should make that illegal or we should go after the people supplying that. That's almost half. If your country, if your population wants a drug, they're going to get it no matter what. You're just going to make them go through extra hoops, but that's why the black market exists. If you like, there's so many better ways we could go through this. So not only would we save so much money by getting rid of all these nonviolent criminals, quote unquote criminals, in our prisons, not only would we save so much money if we just stopped the war on drugs, we would save so much more money if we made marijuana and other drugs legal, getting rid of the need for a black market, make it competitive with the black market, and make it beat the black market so people would go and buy these drugs legally. And then think of all of that tax revenue the government would get from all of those sales. We could reverse the deficit spending in the horrible amount of debt that state, and I know it wouldn't get rid of the entire national debt, but that is just a one step in many things that libertarians would do in order to reverse the trend to definitely make it improved a lot. That, in tandem with other fiscal libertarian policies, would get rid of all of these deficits we have had for decades and decades and decades. It would be a huge boon to tax revenue to local, state, and national governments. That, coupled with the not spending on other things I just mentioned, that would go to a huge way to get rid of the deficit and start making a profit for once. For once, since like Bill Clinton was the last time we had a surplus. I actually have a shot of getting a surplus, and I actually have a chance of all these state governments and local governments having a surplus also. Not militarizing the police to a overzealous extent would also go a long way. I've done countless videos on this before. How we need the cops to be able to fight, terrorists and stuff. So they should have armor and automatic weapons and snipers. But like, do they need armored APZs? When have they ever used an armor personnel carrier like ever in combat? Never. They never do. Why should we spend millions and millions of dollars on these vehicles that we never use? Or we might use like once a decade, if that. I I've scourged the internet for times when police have used APCs, but I cannot find any. I'm sure there might be one instant, but I can't find any. And that about sums it up. Breonna Taylor's death is just the latest on the war on drugs. Countless people have been killed during these raids, including police officers. So it's casualties on both sides that are completely needless if we would just get rid of this program and let people do what they want with their own bodies. We would save money, we would not break the constitutional rights, and we would save so much needless death and suffering.